So Klarna thought they were headed for a boom, but it was actually a bust. Let's talk about it. Hi, this is Sky. I'm a saver investor who is on a journey to early retirement. On my channel, I talk about tips and tricks I've learned along the way that have kept me on my journey to early retirement, even with the crazy market flux. And I also talk about recent topics that pertain to saving, everyday budgeting, as well as long term investing. So remember to like and subscribe, and let's get into this topic. Okay, it has not even been a month since I did a video on Klarna and the DoorDash merger. Well, a few days ago, Klarna announced that in the first quarter of 2025, it has lost $99 million. And really, is anyone surprised? Now, in my previous video, I talked about not allowing these companies to convince you that putting your food on DoorDash, essentially on layaway, was a good option. But it seems like some of you had other plans. Essentially, what has occurred is one of the principles that was completely ignored by Klarna when it comes to traditional layaway. People were getting their items up front on the promise that they would pay for it later, which, as we see, that did not work. And another thing I pointed out in my previous video was specifically the population Klarna was targeting. Now, let's go back and talk about traditional layaway. The way traditional layaway worked was you had an item. If you were unable to pay for the item in full, you paid for it in installments. And once you were done paying, you received your item. The key principle of you don't get your reward until the end. Well, Klarna thought they were changing the game, and they decided to give people their items up front on the promise that they would continue to pay. Well, obviously, what happened was a lot of Klarna clients, once they received their items, decided they were not going to pay, which led to a first quarter loss of almost $100 million. Now, back in my video, I spoke on just a month ago. I'll link it up above. But in that video, I said Klarna was specifically targeting a certain population to be their clients, which traditional layaway attracted certain client. And that is the client or the individual who was unable to make the purchase up front. If you were unable to make a purchase up front, then you went with layaway. And usually these were at your everyday shopping stores, retail stores. So one in particular, Walmart. Walmart was very big on layaway. I'm not sure if they still do it, but they were one of the companies that did layaway. And when it came to special events like Christmas or birthdays, most individuals who were living paycheck to paycheck or living on a restricted income were typically the clients that used layaway. And layaway itself even had a stigma to it because it was usually low income individuals who would use this feature. Well, Klarna decided to modernize the layaway and change it into get it up front, pay for it later, which has led to the problems they are in now. So if we look at this report here, it goes into more details of specifically what occurred.
Klarna, one of the industry's biggest players, is seeing red this morning with more of its customers struggling to pay back their loans. The company's losses have doubled since last year, even as it celebrates new partnerships with places like Walmart, DoorDash. Now, across the board, more Americans are falling behind on these quick hit installment loans. A Lending Tree survey shows 41% of buy now, pay later users missed a payment in the last year, with a growing number using these services just to buy groceries. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, U.S. consumer debt has ballooned to a record $18.2 trillion, the one with the T, trillion. And student loan delinquencies are also spiking. So what does all this tell us about the broader economy? Joining me now, I have Erin McLaughlin, senior economist at the Conference Board. Erin, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Okay, so explain this. So Klarna is adding customers, but losing more money on repayments. What does that tell you about household financial stress in 2025?
Well, it's interesting. So the buy now, pay later apps like Klarna are usually used by folks who have a more fragile economic means. So perhaps lower income or consumers that are carrying revolving credit card debt and so choose to go with the buy now, pay later apps because it doesn't necessarily come with the very high interest of credit card debt. So really, a rise in defaults means that consumers are feeling more pressure, especially maybe lower income consumers, and they're feeling that pressure from many different points.
Yeah. And, I mentioned right off the top, more and more people are starting to use this service to buy groceries. Is that typically what buy now, pay later is used for, the everyday essentials?
No, generally they've been that those sorts of apps have been used for larger purchases because you can spread them out generally over 4 payments, such as, high value clothing or handbags and those kinds of things. So to see them used for everyday essentials like groceries, I also noticed in the recent survey that you mentioned that there's an acceleration in using them for food delivery, which is something that sort of increased over the last couple of years substantially.
Yeah.
And the customer base for Klarna, I think, was very strategic in their business plan. I just don't think they thought it would be as detrimental as it was because they were specifically targeting customers who either did not have the ability to pay for these items up front or had other consumer debt that they were already not paying, which I still don't understand the business model completely, but I'm sure in the long run, they were making debtors for life. It's ultimately what I think the plan was. Have revolving debt that you will not get out of, but you continue to add more revolving debt because they were presenting it not as your traditional debt, when in reality it is. It may not be directly reported to the credit bureau, but it's still on your record as a debt, something you owe money on, something you're making payments on, something you're making installments on. Now, whether or not you choose to pay it doesn't change that it's still listed as an installment payment. So, with targeting individuals who were already in distress and more likely to latch onto their product, they continue down the same route as the payday loan individuals, where you get a payday loan, and by the time your next paycheck comes around, if you didn't have money the first paycheck, you probably don't have the money to pay them back by your next paycheck. And then you continue to follow behind in your payments and your responsibilities and clearing this debt. And ultimately, it creates a cycle of debtness. It also creates a cycle of poverty. So, not even a month after the announcement of their merger, they are back in the hole. And at this point, any company that continues to merger or do collaborations with them, again, to me, it makes no sense. But to a business, it probably makes sense because they continue to keep you in debt. So remember, it's the first of the month. Make sure to review your budget. If you don't have a budget, it's a perfect time to start one. And make sure we start changing our mindset. Debt should not be a way of life. We need to change our mindset in that staying in debt is not something where we should want to be. This you only live once lifestyle is not going to be something that's going to be beneficial to you down the road when you are now trying to figure out how your long life is supposed to go and you are in so much debt that you cannot see the light at the end of the tunnel. Let's make sure we're all able to age gracefully both in life and in our finances. So remember to like and subscribe. If you have any comments, any ideas on how people can work on getting away from things such as Klarna, buy now, pay later, even payday loans, or if you've been in this situation, if you owe Klarna money or one of these companies money, let us know why you don't plan on paying them back. So this is Sky of Sky's Bucket List Life. So until next time, let's keep budgeting and let's stay on track.